To plan, design, construct and place a ship into service costs millions of dollars and a great deal of time, effort and expertise. As part of this process, protection coatings are applied to a vessel's structure and surfaces as part of its cosmetic makeover, including rigorous anti-corrosion protective coatings on surfaces exposed to the weather and seawater. This program will detail the correct methods of priming and painting the areas of a ship that will require maintenance most frequently. It is aimed at all ship's personnel who either paint or are responsible for those who paint or maintain steel decks. Upon completion of this program, you will understand how to prepare, clean, prime and paint steel surfaces correctly and efficiently. Although the ship's protective coatings are the last to be applied during construction, they are some of the most important. It is critical that the correct paint system is used during the construction phase and all surfaces are properly maintained when the ship enters into service. The ocean is an unrelenting, corrosive environment, constantly doing its best to wear down and damage the ship's protective barriers, which is why ongoing assessment and upkeep of those barriers is so important. The video has the following sections: PPE check and toolbox talk, preparation, application, cleaning and storage, and summary of key learning points. It will focus on painting the areas of a vessel most exposed to the weather, specifically steel surfaces. Before the work starts, a toolbox talk takes place at the scene with those involved in performing the task. Everyone involved in the talk should have an opportunity to raise any concerns, pose questions, or share thoughts relating to the task at hand. Once the talk is finished, all involved should fully understand their role in the work and the precautions to be taken. The next step is to check that the correct personal protective equipment, or PPE, is being worn by all those who will be undertaking the work. Hard hat with chin strap, goggles, mask, overalls, safety harness, gloves, work boots and knee pads could all be required for painting and deck maintenance tasks, particularly where tools such as the grit blaster or paint sprayers are used. Since planning is key to success of the task, the scope and schedule of the works will be discussed during the toolbox talk, as well as the materials to be used and safety procedures that should be followed. Any specifics relating to the type of work being undertaken would also be raised here. For example, if working at height, the appropriate platform, steps, ladder or scaffolding to be used should be checked by an officer prior to use. A permit to work may be required. If in doubt, refer to your company's safety management system. Before any work can be done, the surface will need to be thoroughly cleaned and prepared in order to remove all the dirt, oil, grease and salt deposits. Only approved detergents should be used while thoroughly scrubbing the surfaces clean, ensuring that no trace of oil or grease remains. This would be followed by a fresh water wash. Now working with a clean surface, the first potential issue to deal with is any buildup of loose paint and hard particles, especially on weld spikes and peaks, which will need to be removed through scraping. A light scraping will be enough so long as no loose paint remains when finished. Then the edges must be smoothed down to reduce surface roughness. Once this has been done, then all remaining rust and loose paint must be thoroughly removed. The biggest enemy of all is rust. Unless all the rust is removed from the area before painting, it will quickly undo all the good work being done. There are powerful tools available to ensure the steel is stripped of all old paint and rust. One of these is the grit blaster, which is a commonly used tool. Note that additional PPE may be required for grit blasting, such as specialized grit blasting hard hat and gloves. The grit blaster is a highly powerful and efficient method of stripping rust and other unwanted surface contaminants. A properly cleaned and prepared steel surface may remain rust-free for a number of years. A grinder with sanding disc attached should only be used to smooth old paint edges. More fresh water is used to help clean off salt deposits. Again, this is an important job because any salt remaining will cause the paint to detach from the surface over time. The first step is to check that the weather conditions are correct for applying the paint. The ideal scenario would be a warm and dry day, so long as there is not too much moisture in the air. Be careful when painting in direct sunlight, as skin drying may occur, where wet paint is trapped underneath a dry skin on top. Too much moisture or sea spray, or even an overheated surface would all cause issues with paint adhesion. The surface should be blown with air or washed with fresh water. Check it is moisture-free and that there has been no sweating. Don't paint if the temperature of the steel is lower than the atmospheric temperature, or if below 5 degrees Celsius, preferably 10 degrees, or if it is above 45 degrees Celsius. The next step is to check that the correct primers and finishing coats are being used for the job at hand. The officer in charge and the bosun can advise which paint systems will match the ship's painting requirements. Incorrect selection of the paint systems could result in issues such as wrinkling or lack of adhesion. Before opening the cans, the lid should be checked for residue that might contaminate the paint. Once cleaned off, they can be opened and mixed thoroughly to ensure the solvents and the pigment are evenly mixed. Don't add thinner, this will only reduce application thickness. Keep paint at room temperature before application, ideally above 10 degrees Celsius. Paints must be mixed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. An industrial mixer will give the best results. Using anything else, for example a stick, won't mix the paint thoroughly enough, resulting in an uneven coating. Monitor the paint's maximum pot life and don't exceed it. The pot life depends on the temperature it is stored at. The primer must be applied by round brushes or spray guns. This is the most important part of the painting process, as the primer must be thick enough to provide optimal protection over many years. Therefore, these are the best methods of ensuring the correct amount is applied. You will normally need 3 to 4 layers when using the brush and a minimum 2 layers when using the spray. Smaller areas, awkward, inaccessible spots and edges should always be done by brushes. This is a slower process but essential in order to achieve the recommended primer depth. Special PPE must be worn while spraying, as the machinery uses a highly pressurized mechanism to apply the paint. Spraying should be done evenly at an angle of 90 degrees and from a distance of about 30 to 40 centimeters from the surface. The spray should start after the stroke begins and finish before the stroke ends. The recommended primer paint thickness is 300 microns, which is roughly equivalent to 4 coats delivered by a round brush or 2 coats from spraying. Since it is almost impossible to apply exactly 100 microns per 1 coat by brush, the dry film thickness, or DFT, should be checked before application of the top coat. The initial coat will need time to dry before the other coats are added, which will depend on the paint system selected for the work. If in doubt, the officer in charge or bosun can advise on this. If the work continues the following day, the surface will need to be cleaned of any new salt deposits or dirt before resuming the job. The final colored coat may be applied by roller, as this is simply a cosmetic layer. Correctly selected paint systems will avoid the need for using thinners. Thinners should not be added to the paint, as they create a thinner coat with an increased risk of rust penetration. Once all the coats have fully dried out, the thickness is gauged to ensure that the job has been done in accordance with the ship's preferred specifications, which can be done with an electronic node. Remember also to conduct primer stripe coating of sharp edges, bolts and weld seams before applying the top coat. Once the work is finished, either for the day or at the end of the job, it is time to clean up. Ensuring that all tools and equipment are thoroughly cleaned will prevent paint contamination and ensure the tools last longer. Thinners can be used at this stage for cleaning brushes and spray nozzles. When the tools and containers have been cleaned, they should be carefully put away. All brushes, sprayers, grit blasters and mixers need to be carefully placed back into their respective storage rooms in the correct section. Clean up the area where the paints are stored And make sure that paint cans are free from spillages too. Make sure that the older paints are used first, also known as first in, first out, and that the containers are all clearly marked and the labels clearly visible. When entering the paint store, do not smoke and make sure that the area is well ventilated. Enclosed space entry procedures may apply. New products being added into stores should be placed at the back, older containers at the front, ensuring that stock wastage is minimized. Paint and solvents create flammable and toxic vapors, and so the proper safeguards should be applied at all times. This film has highlighted many of the most important aspects of painting on board, the reasons why they are undertaken, and the correct methods of performing those actions. It is critical that these actions be done the right way to ensure that the work lasts for as long as possible. This is done through following the ship's safety management and planned maintenance system, wearing the correct PPE, properly cleaning and preparing surfaces to be painted. Surfaces should be cleaned before each application, even overnight. Using a grit blaster will produce the best results during the cleaning phase. Correctly applying the primer and paint layers. Round brushes or a spray gun should be used for the first primer coats. Thinners should not be added to the paint. Thoroughly cleaning all materials used afterwards. Storing and stock rotating paint and equipment. After viewing the film, if you require guidance or have any questions, make sure you re-watch until you are clear, or simply ask for help. More information can be found in the accompanying workbook. Following the methods detailed in this video will help to keep the ship running at optimal performance over a period of many years. Your hard work will ultimately save money and conserve resources, while safeguarding people and property by making sure that the ship's protective barriers remain intact.